All right, sorry about that. So the idea here is it's cringeworthy when we see stuff of our past brought out in front of us today. And the example here is this story of a guy named Carson King. He was 24 years old. He was a security guard. And he had this moment where he got on TV, one of these sports broadcasts, it was a live broadcast. He gets on TV, and I couldn't find out what he did, but he did something that went viral. It went big, and everybody was interested in this guy. And so what ends up happening is this guy takes this opportunity to raise money for charity. All right? He gets this opportunity where he goes viral and he raises $1 million for a children's hospital. Sounds great, right? Yeah. I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have thought to have done that if I had my moment of fame. Well, this guy, bless his heart, he says, I'm going to make $1 million for a children's hospital charity. Great. Well, so what ends up happening with all this fame is some newspaper reporter says, hey, I'd like to interview you, Mr. King. Great, come on out. He interviews the guy, and at the end of the interview, everything seems to go fine. He goes away, and the guy says, I'm going to dig up whatever dirt I can on this Carson King fellow. So instead of this news story in the paper being about how this guy has taken his moment of fame and earned all this money for charity, the guy makes it about how Mr. King, 8 years prior, as a stupid 16-year-old boy, put some tweets up there that had some racist content in them. Now, I couldn't find the tweets. I don't know what exactly he said, but basically it was something 8 years prior that he didn't do anymore. This wasn't current stuff. This is stuff he seems to have grown beyond, and yet this guy was trying to crucify the guy for stuff he said 8 years prior, despite the fact that what he was actually doing at the moment was raising $1 million plus for charity, not benefiting himself from his moment of fame. So this interviewer decides, we need to cancel this guy because something he did in his past. That is cancel culture, trying to remove this guy's ability to raise money for charity for something he'd done years ago, stuff that he had disavowed in the current light. So this is a problem. And what it comes up for me is this story about Noah being drunk. We talked about this story a couple months ago in the context of how we need to see the good in others. All right, the short version of this story here in Genesis 9 is that Noah gets drunk, and one of his sons, Ham, comes out and says, "Oh, look," to the other brothers, "Dad's drunk." Well, Shem and Japheth, what they do is they get a cloak and they walk backwards. They don't see Dad's nakedness and they cover it over him. And what we said was that this is what we're supposed to be doing. We are supposed to excuse the errors and mistakes in other people, right? That's the goal. See the good, excuse the bad. That's the way the Lord's asking us to be. But for today's talk, the context is we're looking at the other side. What's Ham? So we're looking at the significance of Ham, and Secrets of Heaven, number 1080, tells us just that. That he pointed it out to two brothers means that he, Ham, mocked. This now follows from what is said above, for with people who have no charity, there is unending contempt of others. That is unending mockery of them. And this is the money line right here. And as often as the occasion allows, errors are exposed. That's what was going on with the interviewer, the newspaper guy. As often as the occasion allowed, errors were exposed. What was he trying to do? He was mocking the guy. He was trying to take him down. Why? I don't know. But he had contempt for the guy for whatever reason. That's what was going on. He had contempt for that. He had no charity and ended up trying to mock him and take him down. Now, the story has kind of a twist in the end, in the sense that this reporter actually was not looked upon kindly for his contempt for Mr. King, and somebody went digging into his past and found out, oh, this guy had some dumb and insensitive tweets that he'd written up years ago too, and hey buddy, you're a bit of a hypocrite, you can't hold it against him if you got up to that standard yourself. So he ends up not doing very well out of the situation. What he thought he was going to do by canceling this guy gets himself in big trouble, which quite frankly is the way I think things ought to work. It's like, well, you know what? Whatever you give comes back to you. That's kind of how karma goes. So, but the thing here that I'm seeing is the contempt. And, you know, contempt works in a lot of different ways in our life. You know, and it can prevent us from having the blessings and the good things that we're supposed to have when all we're trying to do is point out the errors in other people. Think about it in terms of the New Testament. Okay, you have Jesus versus the religious establishment. And what is Jesus doing in his life on earth? Well, he's healing people, he's teaching people, he's trying to make them happy, healthy, whole, you know, bring them whole, right? He's healing them from their blindness. Well, one of the times we have a story where Jesus heals a man who's blind. And what do the Pharisees do? Well, they attack him. They condemn him, saying, oh, well, this guy must be of the devil. All right, another time he feeds people, and they go, oh, well, you can't do that. It's a Sabbath day. Oh, you can't do this. That's not right. Oh, this person's a sinner. This person's a Jew, or not a Jew. You know, you can't do all these things. They got all these rules, all these things where they're pointing out what they perceive as errors in what Jesus is doing. But what's the reality? Reality is they're missing out on all the blessings that he's offering. Right? Do you ever have any stories of Pharisees getting lots of good things happening for them from Jesus? No, because they hold him in contempt, always pointing out every error they can find at any occasion they get. What do they want to do? They want to cancel Jesus, right? They want to cancel him. They get rid of this guy. He does not conform to our power structure. He does not conform to what we think is right. Let's find some errors and let's get rid of this guy. All of Jesus' stories really are about blessings and healings and making things better, but the Pharisees don't get it because they take offense. This is what we're talking about with the kids. They're taking offense to things, and therefore they're missing out. And look, you know, you can kind of take the story and go, all right, well, you know, the Pharisees in that time, they had a lot of power in that culture and in that place. And you can kind of make a case in your head where you can understand and empathize why they're afraid to lose their power. But what boggles my mind, really, truly, is that we will find the smallest little bit of power that we have in life and fight for it tooth and nail. I was in the coffee shop this week working on this service and sitting there at my table with my little laptop clicking along, and I see this kerfuffle happening in the background. See, this guy had come in the shop, and you know the place to stand in front of the register is here. Well, he stands over here, and when the person is served, another person comes in over here. And the cashier takes this person, not noticing that he was waiting to be served. Because people often just stand off to the side of this place, they're waiting for somebody else. So she doesn't see him. Well, he gets upset. He's wound up because, hey, you know, you jumped in line in front of me. And he doesn't say this nicely. He's clearly agitated and bent out of shape. And so this lady, well, I was here. I didn't know. And so they get kind of tense and wound up, and you go. They say the other can go, but they're not being very kind about it. It's like, fine, screw you. If you want to go ahead. Well, it ends up the woman who's over here, she says, you know what? Walking away, she goes over and says, I'll just sit right down over here. You have the floor, sir. You can go right ahead. Well, so he comes on up, strolls himself up to the cashier, and you know what he does? He proceeds to tell the cashier about all the ways that she was wrong by being willing to serve the other woman first, and that he was clearly there first. He was socially distancing and blah, 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 blah. And this cashier, unfortunately, decides to take issue with this, and so now she's defending herself, and the guy blows up, rants walks out the door, and he has no coffee. He's got no coffee. He's not happy. Nobody's happy. It's really quite the mess, but he is clearly holding everybody in contempt in this chain of events. You didn't serve me right. I'm pointing out your errors. You jumped in line in front of me. I mean, this was not a theme park where there was a 3-hour wait to get the next spot. It would have been very easy. Oh, I'm in the wrong spot. Oh, I see that now. I'll come stand over here. Takes her, one person. Could have taken the coffee on, this did not have to go this way. The cashier could have said, hey, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. No big deal. There were a lot of ways for this to not go poorly. But we hold people in contempt when we think we're better than them, that we're right, they're wrong, and it takes us to a very bad place. We want to cancel these people out of our lives. This guy's like, I'm not coming back here anymore. Okay, see you, bye. He's going to cancel that coffee shop out because of something really very stupid. Well, we'll see in time if he actually does come back. But, the Lord, He provides us with these moments so that we learn to not be upset by them. The story of Hagar in Genesis 21 here, I'm not going to read it, but I'm assuming you're somewhat familiar with it. Hagar has this boy Ishmael. Sarah's not happy, wants to get rid of Hagar and the boy because he considers they're a mockery to her because she's got this child. So off they go, and it gets to the point where Hagar is desperate. All right, she's run out of food, she's run out of water, she's seeing the boy is going to die, she's going to die. Oh, Lord, help. And what Secrets of Heaven 2694 says is that we need to get to this place of desperation. We need to get there. Because when we do, we lose that whole sense of self-importance. We lose that whole thing of contempt for everybody else because we suddenly realize the errors in our own ways. Let's take a look at this reading here. Secrets of Heaven 2694. It says, fear not, for God hath heard the voice of the child where he is, that this signifies the hope of help is evident from the signification of fear not as being not to despair, for when fear is taken away, hope is present, and from the signification of hearing the voice of the child as being help. In the verses which precede the state of desolation, right? Devastation, oh no, everything's falling apart, in which those who are being reformed and are becoming spiritual is treated of, and now the subject of them being restored, and here their comfort of hope and help. Skip down to the next paragraph where it starts with but, all right? But when they are reduced to such a state that they perceive hell in themselves, and this to such degree as to despair of ever being able to be saved, then for the first time that persuasive is broken, and with it their pride and their contempt of others in comparison with themselves, and also the arrogance that they are the only ones who are saved. And they can be led into true confession of faith, not only that all good is from the Lord, but that all things are of his mercy, and at length into humiliation of heart before the Lord, which is not possible without the acknowledgement of the true character of self. Stop there. Point is, if you don't have these moments where everything seems to fall apart and going bad, you don't have that ability to self-reflect. This newspaper reporter that I started off in the beginning with, he might actually come out and benefit from this. He tried to cancel the other guy, and this may have gone really bad for him to the point he can say, you know what? Yeah, I'm not perfect either. And when we start carrying this around that we're not perfect either, we have the ability to see that, you know what? I don't have to hold against you and you and you your imperfection. That's the idea here. That's where guilt is useful. That's where remembering our past mistakes is useful. Not to beat us down, but to make us chill out and say, you know what? I don't have to hold that against you because you know what? I've done some bad things too. right? The Lord tells us that parable of the unmerciful servant, right? He forgives the servant, a huge debt, and then the servant goes on and doesn't cancel the small debt that somebody owes him. The Lord says, no, you can't do that. I forgave you a huge debt. You've got to forgive other people their debts. That's what we've got to do. When we don't do this, if we don't get to that place, pride, contempt, it's a snare to us. In Exodus, the Lord says, look, if you don't get rid of the other gods out of your land, they're going to be a snare to you. Well, what are the other gods? Well, other gods are, the Dagons and the Baals, self-indulgence and hedonism, all those kind of things. And of course, love of self. Those things are going to be a snare to you because the contempt and all that stuff won't ever leave. I'm going to wrap this one up with a couple things just to kind of show you where this goes, kind of the danger of contempt. These are two readings that talk about, what happens to people in the next life who have contempt still within them. Secrets of Heaven 27:45. There are women who do not love their husbands, but hold them in contempt, and at